The Saudi kingdom, Saudi Arabia, reportedly considering accepting Chinese currency instead of US dollars.
Yesterday, Gazprom and its Chinese partners decided to move to rubles and yuan in 50-50 split when paying for Russian gas supply.
The U.S. has agreed to rapidly boost shipments of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to the European Union this year as part of efforts to wean the bloc off Russian fuel.
With global trade wars, currency devaluation, and other economic strategies in play, it appears that Russia and China are set on weakening the world's reserve currency. But what exactly are they doing to achieve this goal, and how is it impacting the global market? In this video, we'll explore why the dollar is doomed and how Russia and China are taking over the world economy. By understanding their tactics, you can better prepare for any potential impacts on the global economy. So without wasting a minute, let's quickly get started. So why are Russia and China so intent on weakening the dollar? To understand this question, we need to have a better understanding of why the US dollar is so powerful, and also why does it have the upper hand in reserve currency all around the world. The US dollar has been the world's undisputed reserve currency for more than a century. Its influence and power can be attributed to several factors, including its stability and liquidity, the attractiveness of US financial markets, and its acceptance as a global medium of exchange. The US also maintains relatively low inflation and interest rates compared to other countries, making it an attractive investment destination. Additionally, the US has a reputation for economic and political stability, which is key when it comes to managing global finances. American-based institutions also have access to the world's largest capital markets, allowing them to benefit from significant liquidity. When the stock and bond markets become unstable, as they have this year, many investors believe the dollar to be the safest asset to own. That's in part due to the dollar's special status as the reserve currency of the globe. This indicates that there are plenty of dollars available for use in foreign transactions at central banks and financial institutions around the world. They do this because financing and investing abroad are made possible by using a single currency rather than having to convert between them. The US dollar is the most powerful currency in the world because it's used as the reserve currency by central banks around the globe. This means that when other countries want to buy or sell something, they need to use US dollars. The dollar has a monopoly on this market, which gives it a lot of power. The US economy appears to be doing better than the economies of many other nations, where growth is sluggish and debts and inflation are worse than in the US. Due to disruptions in the energy supply caused by the conflict in Ukraine, the EU in general is grappling with rising inflation and a decreasing economy, and may have already entered a recession. The reason the dollar has this monopoly is because of the SWIFT network. The SWIFT network is a global system that facilitates the transfer of money between banks. It's the reason for the dollar's dominance because it allows banks to quickly and easily send money to each other in different currencies. This makes it very convenient for international trade and investment, which is why the majority of the world's transactions are conducted in dollars. All major banks use SWIFT, and most of them use it to settle transactions in US dollars. This gives the dollar a big advantage over other currencies. Moreover, the US assured the security of Saudi Arabia in exchange for the Saudi king agreeing to sell oil in US dollars. So if you want to purchase oil, you need to have US dollars. This is the second reason for the dollar's dominance, and is the only currency that could purchase oil from the Saudis. These two factors are what led to the dollar's dominance. In 1945, US President Franklin Roosevelt made this historic agreement with the Saudi king. Another reason the dollar is so powerful is because of a bond investment. Bond investments play a critical role in the global economy and help to stabilize financial markets. When investors purchase bonds, they're essentially lending money to a government or corporation. The bond issuer agrees to repay the loan with interest over a set period of time. Bonds are often used by central banks as a tool to manage inflation and interest rates. For example, when inflation is low, central banks can purchase bonds in order to keep interest rates low and encourage economic growth. Conversely, when inflation is high, central banks can sell bonds in order to raise interest rates and slow down the economy. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, which means that it's held by central banks around the world as a reserve asset. This gives the US dollar a unique status and allows the US government to borrow money at lower interest rates than other countries. The role of bond investment in the global economy is therefore crucial. By stabilizing financial markets and managing inflation, bonds help to keep the global economy running smoothly. However, not everyone is happy with the dollar's dominance. It's no secret that Russia and China are not on the best terms with the United States. In fact, relations between the two countries have been strained for quite some time. The main reason for this is the fact that America's economic dominance is a direct threat to both Russia's and China's own economic interests. The two countries have also been working to set up a new global financial system that would be less reliant on the US dollar. This would be a huge blow to America's economic power. Despite Saudi Arabia and other nations trading oil and gas in dollars, Russia is among the world's major producers of both. Even though most European nations hated Putin for it, Russia forced them to purchase Russian oil in rubles as a form of punishment. As a result, in the direct debit network diagram, all hostile nations that purchased petroleum from Russia were now required to deposit their funds with the Russian central bank rather than the US bank, which had dollar reserves. We're witnessing the rise of the petro-ruble, which means that just as the dollar reserve supports the US economy, the ruble reserve is anticipated to make up for the harm to the Russian economy. If you look at the Russian dollar reserve, they've been preparing to do away with the US dollar since 2014. And if you look at the graph, you can see that the US Treasury has decreased from $150 billion in 2013 to just $3.98 billion as of 2021. China has significant economic leverage over the countries involved in the Belt and Road Initiative. These countries are heavily reliant on Chinese investment and trade, and would be hard-pressed to find alternative sources of funding and trade partners if China were to withdraw its support. This gives China a great deal of political and economic power over the BRI countries, which it can use to further its own interests. But before we move on, if you're not subscribed to the BizStudied YouTube channel, you need to subscribe before the end of 2022. We want to get to 50,000 subscribers, so please subscribe so we hit our goal and reach many more people. The next video is going to be even better, so don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now back to the video. Due to its leverage over these nations, experts predict that China would ask them to take and repay loans in yuan in exchange for which it will provide them a 1% interest rate reduction. In fact, China has indeed granted 14% of all loans since the start of a BRI initiative in its own currency, independent of the dollar. And guess what? Starting in 2018, the Central Bank of Pakistan has already committed to conducting all bilateral China trade in yuan, as are Russia, Myanmar, and Cambodia. Additionally, China is currently the largest trading partner, with 25 countries participating in the BRI, demonstrating once more how powerful trade is for China. As a result, you can see how China could pressure these nations to use the yuan rather than the dollar by combining trade and debt. In this way, China could eventually assemble a network of 165 countries and significantly expand the use of the yuan. To start, Russia has already established the Chinese yuan as a reserve currency, which is a significant development. Other nations have something known as a bilateral currency exchange agreement. So let's first try to understand what a bilateral currency swap basically is. A bilateral currency swap is a pact between two nations to exchange currencies. For example, the United States and China may agree to swap dollars for yuan. This swap allows for both countries to avoid the risk of currency fluctuations. A currency swap can be used as a tool of geopolitics. For example, Russia and China may agree to swap rubles for yuan. This gives Russia a way to avoid sanctions from the West, while also giving China a way to avoid the risk of currency fluctuations. The benefits of a currency swap are that it can help stabilize the value of a currency, and it can help two countries trade with each other without having to use a third currency. The downside of a currency swap is that it can create imbalances in the global economy, and it can be used as a tool of geopolitical manipulation. And guess what? Beijing has negotiated bilateral currency swap agreements totaling more than 3 trillion yuans with more than 40 nations worldwide, including 400 billion yuan apiece to Hong Kong and South Korea, 350 billion yuan apiece with the European Central Bank and the Bank of England. With about 20% of the world's manufacturing taking place in China, which is the world's largest manufacturer, they may further take advantage of this to force the corporations to pay in yuan rather than the US dollar. 300 billion yuan with Singapore and 150 billion yuan with Russia would be the icing on the cake. Also, Saudi Arabia is actively negotiating with Beijing to price part of its oil supplies to China in yuan. This would weaken the US dollar's dominance of the world petroleum market and signal another turn by the top petroleum exporter towards Asia. As the Saudis have grown increasingly dissatisfied with decades-old US security obligations to safeguard the kingdom, the negotiations with China regarding yuan-priced oil contracts, which have been ongoing intermittently for 6 years, have intensified this year, the people said. The absence of American backing for Saudi engagements in the civil war in Yemen and the Biden administration's attempt to reach a nuclear deal with Iran has the Saudis furious. According to Saudi officials, the abrupt US exit from Afghanistan the year before startled them. And over 25% of Saudi Arabia's oil exports are purchased by China. Those sales would improve the reputation of China's currency if they were priced in yuan. In contrast, China has increased its oil imports over the past 3 decades in tandem with its growing economy. According to data from China's General Administration of Customs, Saudi Arabia was the largest crude supplier to China in 2021, selling 1.76 million barrels per day, followed by Russia at 1.6 million barrels per day. So, if Saudi Arabia did so, many nations would rush to buy yuan. The excess yuan would then be invested in Chinese bonds, strengthening the Chinese economy, just as we saw with excess forex going into US bonds. This is how China and Russia are gradually constructing their currency strategy to replace the reserve currency, which is currently the US dollar. This all is not as easy as it seems. Russia and China still have to go through a lot of struggles to achieve their goal of overcoming US dollars. The first obstacle both Russia and China will confront is their terrible reputations in the world. China is known for its death trap tactics and the invasion of Taiwan, while Russia has previously been surrounded by the West. Additionally, it's now quite obvious to the world that China is not as transparent as the US, which will discourage countries from truly adopting the yuan over the US dollar. China has been depreciating its currency extremely regularly, and the US has also accused China of currency manipulation. Both these countries will definitely require a great struggle and some clever plans to get through these obstacles. As economic power shifts away from the US, so too does its influence over the global economic order. In these uncertain times, it's become increasingly apparent that no single country holds complete dominance over the world economy. Rather, economic power is becoming more dispersed and dynamic. The success of Russia and China's economic strategy is reflective of the changing tide in global finance and could prove to be a sign of things to come. By this comes the end of the video. I hope this video gives you a better understanding of the ongoing economic crisis among the three superpowers. What do you think can help China and Russia win this economic war against the US? Do you think the yuan will be the new dollar, or do you think America can fight both countries and can maintain its dominance? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.